musician, said the wolf. I will obey thee as a scholar obeys his master. The musician bade him follow, and when they had gone part of the way together, they came to an old oak tree which was hollow inside, and cleft in the middle. Look, said the musician, if thou wilt learn to fiddle, put thy forepaws into this crevice. The wolf obeyed, but the musician quickly picked up a stone, and with one blow wedged his two paws so fast that he was forced to stay there like a prisoner. Stay there until I come back again, said the musician, and went his way. After a while he again said to himself, time is beginning to pass heavily with me here in the forest. I will fetch hither another companion, and took his fiddle and again played in the forest. It was not long before a fox came creeping through the trees towards him. Ah, there's a fox coming, said the musician. I have no desire for him. The fox came up to him and said, Oh, dear musician, how beautifully thou dost play. I should like to learn that too. That is soon learnt, said the musician. Thou hast only to do everything that I bid thee. Oh, musician, then, said the fox, I will obey thee, as a scholar obeys his master. Follow me, said the musician, and when they had walked a part of the way, they came to a footpath with high bushes on both sides of it. There the musician stood still, and from one side bent a young hazel bush down to the ground, and put his foot on the top of it. Then he bent down a young tree from the other side as well, and said, Now, little fox, if thou wilt learn something, give me thy left front paw. The fox obeyed, and the musician fastened his paw to the left bow. Little fox, said he, now reach me thy right paw, and he tied it to the right bow. When he had examined whether they were firm enough, he let go, and the bushes sprang up again and jerked up the little fox, so that it hung struggling in the air. Wait there till I come back again, said the musician, and went his way. Again he said to himself, time is beginning to pass heavily with me here in the forest. I will fetch hither another companion. So he took his fiddle, and the sound echoed through the forest. Then a little hare came springing towards him. Why, a hare is coming, said the musician. I do not want him. Ah, dear musician, said the hare, how beautifully thou dost fiddle. I too should like to learn that. That is soon learnt, said the musician. Thou hast only to do everything that I bid thee. O musician, replied the little hare, I will obey thee as a scholar obeys his master. They went a part of the way together until they came to an open space in the forest where stood an aspen tree. The musician tied a long string round the little hare's neck, the other end of which he fastened to the tree. Now briskly, little hare, run 20 times around the tree, cried the musician, and the little hare obeyed, and when it had run round 20 times, it had twisted the string 20 times around the trunk of the tree, and the little hare was caught, and let it pull and tug as it liked. It only made the string cut into the tender neck. Wait there till I come back, said the musician, and went onwards. The wolf, in the meantime, had pushed and pulled and bitten at the stone, and had worked so long that he had set his feet at liberty, and had trodden them once more out of the cleft. Full of anger and rage, he hurried after the musician, and wanted to tear him to pieces. When the fox saw him running, he began to lament, and cried with all his might, Brother wolf, come to my help, the musician has betrayed me. The wolf drew down the little tree, bit the cord in two, and freed the fox, who went with him to take revenge on the musician. They found the tied-up hare, whom likewise they rescued, and then they all sought the enemy together. The musician had once more played his fiddle as he went on his way, and this time he had been more fortunate. The sound reached the ears of a poor woodcutter, who instantly, whether he would or no, gave up his work and came with his hatchet on So he raised his glittering axe and placed himself before the musician, as if to say, "Whoso wishes to touch him, let him beware, for he will have to do with me." Then the beasts were terrified and ran back into the forest. The musician, however, played once more to the man out of gratitude, and then went onwards. The 12 Brothers. There were once upon a time a king and a queen who lived happily together and had 12 children, but they were all boys. Then said the king to his wife, "If the 13th child which thou art about to bring into the world is a girl, the 12 boys shall die, in order that her possessions may be great, and that the kingdom may fall to her alone." He caused likewise 12 coffins to be made, which were already filled with shavings, and in each lay the little pillow for the dead. And he had them taken into a locked-up room, and then he gave the queen the key of it, and bade her not to speak of this to anyone. The mother, however, now sat and lamented all day long, until the youngest son, who was always with her, and whom she had named Benjamin from the Bible, said to her, "Dear mother, why art thou so sad?" "Dearest child," she answered, "I may not tell thee." But he let her have no rest until she went and unlocked the room, and showed him the 12 coffins ready filled with shavings. Then she said, "My dearest Benjamin, thy father has had these coffins made for thee and for thy 11 brothers. For if I bring a little girl into the world, you are all to be killed and buried in them." And as she wept while she was saying this, the son comforted her and said, "Weep not, dear mother, we will save ourselves and go hence." But she said, "Go forth into the forest with thy 11 brothers, and let one sit constantly on the highest tree which can be found, and keep watch, looking towards the tower here in the castle. If I give birth to a little son, I will put up a white flag, and then you may venture to come back. But if I bear a daughter, I will hoist a red flag, and then fly hence as quickly as you are able, and may the good God protect you. And every night I will rise up and pray for you, in winter that you may be able to warm yourself at a fire, and in summer that you may not faint away in the heat." After she had blessed her sons, therefore, they went forth into the forest. They each kept watch in turn, and sat on the highest oak, and looked towards the tower. When 11 days had passed, and the turn came to Benjamin, he saw that a flag was being raised. It was, however, not white, but the blood-red flag which announced that they were all to die. When the brothers heard that, they were very angry and said, "Are we all to suffer death for the sake of a girl? We swear that we will avenge ourselves. Wheresoever we find a girl, her red blood shall flow." Thereupon they went deeper into the forest, and in the midst of it, where it was the darkest, they found a little bewitched hut, which was standing empty. Then said they, "Here we will dwell, and thou, Benjamin, who art thou youngest and weakest, thou shalt stay home and keep house. We others will go out and get food." Then they went into the forest and shot hares, wild deer, birds, and pigeons, and whatsoever there was to eat. This they took to Benjamin, who had to dress it for them in order that they might appease their hunger. They lived together 10 years in the little hut, and the time did not appear long to them. The little daughter which their mother, the queen, had given birth to was now grown up. She was good of heart and fair of face, and had a golden star on her forehead. Once, when it was the great washing, she saw 12 men's shirts among the things, and asked her mother, "To whom do these 12 shirts belong to? For they are far too small for father." Then the queen answered with a heavy heart, "Dear child, these belong to thy 12 brothers," said the maiden. "Where are my 12 brothers? I have never yet heard of them," she replied. "God knows where they are. They are wandering about the world." Then she took the maiden and opened the chamber for her, and showed her the 12 coffins with the shavings and pillows for the head. "These coffins," said she, "were destined for thy brothers, but they went away secretly before thou wert born." And she related brothers come, and then I will soon come to an agreement with them. She did so, and when it was night, the others came from hunting, and their dinner was ready, and they were sitting at the table and eating, and they asked, "What news is there?" said Benjamin. "Don't you know anything?" "No," they answered. He continued, "You have been in the forest, and I have stayed home, and yet I know more than you." "Tell us then," they cried. He answered, "But promise me that the first maiden who meets us shall not be killed." "Yes," they all cried, "she shall have mercy. Only do tell us." Then he said, "Our sister is here." And he lifted up the tub, and the king's daughter came forth in her royal garments, with a golden star on her forehead, and she was beautiful, delicate, and fair. Then they were all rejoiced, and fell on her neck, and kissed and loved her with all their hearts. Now she stayed at home with Benjamin, and helped him with the work. The 11 went into the forest, and caught game, and deer, and birds, and wood pigeons, that they might have food, and the little sister and Benjamin took care to make it ready for them. She sought for the wood for cooking, and herbs for vegetables, and put the pans on the fire, so that the dinner was always ready when the 11 came. She likewise kept order in the little house, and put beautifully white clean coverings on the little beds, and the brothers were always content, and lived in great harmony with her. Once upon a time, the two at home had prepared a beautiful entertainment, and when they were all together, they sat down, and ate, and drank, and were full of gladness. There was, however, a little garden belonging to the bewitched house, wherein stood 12 lily flowers, which are likewise called students. She wished to give her brothers pleasure, and plucked the 12 flowers, and she thought she would present each brother with one while at dinner. But at the self-same moment when she plucked the flowers, the 12 brothers were changed into ravens, and flew away over the forest, and the house and garden vanished likewise. And now the poor maiden was alone in the forest, and when she looked around, an old woman was standing near her, who said, "My child, what hast thou done? Why didst thou not leave the 12 white flowers growing? They were thy brothers, who are now forevermore changed into ravens." The maiden said, weeping, "Is there no way of delivering them?" "No," said the woman, "there is but one in the whole world, and that is so hard that thou wilt not deliver them by it. For thou must be dumb for 7 years, and mayst not speak or laugh, and if thou speakest one single word, and only an hour of the 7 years is wanting, all is in vain, and thy brothers will be killed by the one word." Then said the maiden in her heart, "I know with certainty that I shall set my brothers free," and went and sought a high tree, and she seated herself in it, and span, and neither spoke nor laughed. Now it so happened that a king was hunting in the forest, who had a great greyhound, which ran to the tree which the maiden was sitting, and sprang about it, whining and barking at her. Then the king came by, and saw the beautiful king's daughter, with the golden star on her brow, and was so charmed with their beauty, that he called to or asked her if she would be his wife. She made no answer, but nodded a little with her head. So he climbed up the tree himself, carried her down, placed her on his horse, and bore her home. Then the wedding was solemnized with great magnificence and rejoicing, but the bride neither spoke nor smiled. When they had lived happily together for a few years, the king's mother, who was a wicked woman, began to slander the young queen, and said to the king, "This is a common beggar girl, whom thou hast brought back with thee. Who knows what tricks she practices secretly? Even if she be dumb and not able to speak, she still might laugh for once, but those who do not laugh have bad consciences." At first the king would not believe it, but the old woman urged this so long, and accused her of so many evil things, that at last the king let himself be persuaded, and sentenced her to death. And now a great fire was lighted in the courtyard in which she was to be burnt, and the king stood above at the window, and looked on with tearful eyes step on their feet. Late in the evening, they came to an inn, and as they did not like to go further by night, and as the duck also was not strong on her feet and fell from one side to the other, they went in. The host at first made many objections. His house was already full. Besides, he thought they could not be very distinguished persons, but at last they made pleasant speeches, and told him that he should have the egg which the little hen has laid on the way, and should likewise keep the duck, which laid once every day. He at length said that they might stay the night, and now they had themselves well served, and feasted and rioted. Early in the morning, when day was breaking and everyone was asleep, the cock awoke the hen, brought the egg, pecked it open, and they ate it together. But they threw the shell on the hearth. Then they went to the needle, which was still asleep, took it by the head, and stuck it in the cushion of the landlord's chair, and put the pin in his towel. And at the last, without more ado, they flew away over the heath. The duck, who liked to sleep in the open air, had stayed in the yard, heard them going away, made herself merry, and found a stream, down which she swam, which was a much quicker way of traveling than being harnessed to a carriage. The host did not get out of bed for 2 hours after this. He washed himself and wanted to dry himself when the pin went over his face and made a red streak from one ear to the other. After this, he went into the kitchen and wanted to light a pipe, but when he came to the hearth, the eggshell darted in his eyes. "This morning everything attacks my head," said he, and angrily sat down on his grandfather's chair. But he quickly started up again and cried, "Woe is me!" For the needle had pricked him still worse than the pin, and not in the head. Now he was thoroughly angry, and suspected the guests who had come so late the night before, and when he went and looked about for them, they were gone. Then he made a vow to take no more ragamuffins into his house, for they consume much, pay for nothing, and play mischievous tricks in